got a nice little countdown there.
Edit this out.
You know I'm not going to. I don't know why. I don't know. Matt, you need to stop swearing on the main podcast. I like the number of times I've had to ding you out. The last one I was just like,
wait, is that a swear? Is ding a swear?
It's one of the things I ding out, yes.
Ding.
You're okay. Where's that remove button? I'll just do this episode with Nick myself. Okay.
Perfect.
Hello and welcome to Fall Through, your source for deep conversations about technology, software, and computing. I'm your host, Chris Brando, also known as Scriptable, and today it's Matt and me, but we also have a guest. Nick Gerace from System Initiative is joining us to have a fun discussion about System Initiative, AI, and a whole bunch of other stuff. As per usual, if you're a supporter, we have extra content for you. If you're not a supporter, why aren't you? Head over to fallthrough.fm/subscribe and sign up today. And if you're not giving us a follow on social media, you should be, because our socials are fun, and you should also hang out and go for Slack and changelog Zulip and have a chat with us. And with that, let's get into the show.
All right, today we have a pretty good one. We have our first guest of the year, Nick Gerace. He's an engineering manager at System Initiative, and he's been in the infrastructure space for 7 years, you'd say, and you said Linux community for about 15 years. How are you doing today, Nick?
I'm doing well, and you?
Good. We it's funny because we normally record all times of the day, but it's nice to get a early recording with actual East Coasters. We usually do it for other reasons, because it's good for our schedule. But it's good to have a nice East Coaster.
Did I ruin the secret that we all just do nothing in the morning and wake up super late, but now we all can't fall behind that with the West Coast time zone? Did I ruin the secret?
Yeah, basically.
Sorry.
You should see my calendar at work. It's nothing in the morning because everything's West Coast aligned. Is that the same for you?
Yes, 100%. Yeah. I was being a little facetious, but this is the ultimate doctor's appointment. I got to run out and get something, the perfect time to knock that stuff out.
I'm with you. This is why we're here. I put this on my work calendar. Actually, it's not like people don't know that I'm doing this. I have a block on my work calendar saying we're recording this fall through. So
yep,
people see
Great.
it.
Same here.
I mean, you do work at a podcasting company, so it seems fair that you would.
If Brian can have it on his calendar that he's recording a podcast, why can't I? What's the difference here?
I would love On the Metal to come back full time. I loved that podcast. I just ate it up fully. And there's actually a lot of guests from that podcast that I've followed and still followed today. Some of them I've even talked to and interacted with online, and we've sort of exchanged contacts here and there. And Oxide and Friends is great. Don't get me wrong. I've been on there a few times, hung out with you all. Even back when it was a Twitter space, or I guess it's now a Gerace. I don't even know if they exist anymore, but yeah, man. I guess the podcasting company memes still endure. Okay.
On the Metal funny. Is Oxide's still early enough that we're, the product's not ready yet. The customers aren't there yet. And Oxide and Friends is oh, we have customers now and things to do, but we still want to make a podcast.
It reminds me.
No, I'm really just kidding. I don't know if that's the case, but it's kind of funny.
Yeah, I mean, it reminds me a lot of the WAN show from Linus Tech Tips. They've been doing that for oh my God, they've been doing that since 2013, 14. And it's a set time where the owner and one of his first employees basically just talk for 2 hours about topics or whatever. And it feels to me, Oxide and Friends have kind of went that way, which is we're incredibly busy. Set time, set place. This is when we'll catch up, rather than On the Metal, which was a full podcasting operation. And some of those episodes were long.
Oh yeah, no, they were really good. I mean, podcasts. Chris and I were talking about this on a previous episode. Podcasting is a lot to it. So,
especially if you want to do a produced podcast, I think people think, because most of them are just audio. It's just that doesn't make it. That actually makes it harder to produce because you have to tell a story with only audio. You don't get the visuals you do with videos. So it takes a lot to make a really polished narrative podcast episode. unlike this, where we're just kind of chatting away. This is much easier to produce.
This one is nice slow introduction.
Not easy, listener or viewer, just easier. It's
Right.
easier to produce.
Relative.
Yes.
Well, Nick and I had the pleasure of actually meeting in person. He lent me his couch one time, which was great. Thank you for that. And we've met up and hung out and got to talking. And I've done some work with System Initiative. Like I've used product, built some Oxide assets, just generally worked with the team. So I guess in your words, Nick, why don't you tell us, how you got to System Initiative and what you're doing there?
Yeah, so how I got to System Initiative is an interesting story. It was actually via Twitter, which was the same playbook I ran again. So I guess a little bit of of some context as to what I mean by that. I'm from an hour west of Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, near Lancaster, Pennsylvania, Reading, Pennsylvania, that area. And not a lot of tech going on there. I think maybe MapQuest was headquartered out of there, but other than that, not much. So when I was going through university, again, liberal arts university, some great tech connections, but not an absolute ton that like a big state school with a big CS program would have, right? And through that, I just said, okay, well, I'll do what I've always done, which is like just mass consume whatever's on like Reddit or YouTube. And through that, I found Twitter to be a great place to meet tech folks. I was publishing my own blog. I was contributing the open source, just kind of like making my own repositories that did very like simple Linux automation stuff, because I have always been into like just messing around with Linux boxes, whether they were on Metal or VMs. And through that, I met a lot of folks on Twitter and online. And actually, Matthew, I think you and me met through there too. Yes, you were in the System Initiative Discord, but then that follow-up was from that too. So basically, I was at NetApp. I was working with the principal engineer on like the next generation test automation platform. It was containerized. It was really cool. It used Tecton back in its early days. So it was like this job dispatch service. Oh yeah, this was 2018. 2018 to 2019. And
the good old days, even though 2019 was not that.
Oh God, don't say that.
No, it was that long ago, actually.
I know.
Well, 7 years. Oh my God.
And don't worry, we'll make it through this. And we were basically writing Kubernetes operators. Nobody knew if they were operators or controllers at the time. And plus, that was in North Carolina, so that was right down the street from Red Hat. So it was definitely called operators in that region. But we basically were trying to make the next generation platform, taking these early 2000s Perl scripts, converting them to something that could be launched via a controller, and then dispatching tests. And it actually was working very well. But then COVID struck, and I was like, okay, this is a great opportunity to move to San Francisco without actually doing that. So what startups are doing interesting things in this space? Maybe I can move faster pace. I had a roommate, but my girlfriend, now wife, at the time was living somewhere else and everything shut down. So I wanted to like bump up the pace. Where could I move to while being remote? Because nobody's in an office. And we were using Rancher at NetApp. And for years, I want to say 2 or 3 years, I build the cloud. Darren Shepard and I were like going back and forth on Twitter. We were actually complaining about Customize. And I used a lot of Cube Builder. We were talking about Helm. And then one day we just brought that discussion to DMs. And on a whim, I was like, hey, do you all have an opening? I'm kind of just, seeing what's out there. Fast forward, I joined Rancher as a software engineer. So that was a blast. We got acquired by SUSE not too long after I joined. Then the company went public. That I believe SUSE was owned by private equity, and then we all went public in May or June or something like that of 2021, and it was just what a ride. my the COO of System Initiative, Mahir, often says like there's some points in your career when 5 years can happen in 1 year, or 1 year can happen across 5 years. Rancher is a place that to this day I still talk about things that we did, and I did not work there that long overall. Like I want to say like maybe a year and a half, like a year and a few months, but it felt like 5 years. And then to get us all the way back to System Initiative. So again and again and again, similar thing happened, big acquisition, folks are slowly leaving in the startup space, the typical startup thing. And Adam, Jacob, and I were tweeting back and forth about random things, particularly complaining about Kubernetes. Not in that it didn't succeed, but like clearly there's got to be something with that Docker Swarm UX just waiting to happen.
Yeah.
And
Rip Nomad.
Yeah, well, hey, like actually, there were a lot of good ideas that I think that I think we could revisit with a modern lens. But basically, Adam and I were talking, and he actually provided me some career mentorship. And I'd always wanted to be a founder of a tech company, but my ideas were a little needed more time to bake. A lot of Kubernetes V2 type stuff, but I was still pretty nascent in my career. And then I got a demo of System Initiative back when I think they only had the 3 co-founders and 1 engineer that Adam knew, and Fletcher. And he was like, look, you can join System Initiative and I'll teach you like engineering, some of the founder stuff. And you could stay for 2 weeks, 2 months, 2 years, 20 years. Doesn't matter to me. And System Initiative, I saw it and I said, that is the thing that's solving all my Kubernetes woes. And it's been 4 years and a month or two since. So forgive me, that was a little long, but it's like, it's difficult to break that story up because it really is kind of intertangled in a way.
No, it's good. It's good to hear it because, there's a social aspect that I think a lot of people miss, because you get people that are on social media saying like, oh, how do I get a job? But it's not just going out into the social media and like kind of crying out to it. You have to interact with the people that are there, because as you interact with people, you'll find out that, oh, you're working on similar things, or, oh, we have similar like ideals about things. And that's how those relationships are built. And then it turns into that sort of like, oh yeah, you know what? When I have an opening, I'll think of you first because we were talking so much and we share ideals and I think you align well. That networking is important. And not to say that you didn't get the role on your own, like technical merits and stuff, obviously, but there's more than just the technical merits that are important in job hunting. And a lot of people forget that. So it's good to hear a success story.
Yeah. I mean, it's a both and, right? One thing COVID taught me was even the biggest introverts out there need some form of human contact and connection. And there's definitely 100%. The fact that humans are social creatures. I just went to MagFest this past weekend, which is like one of the biggest gaming conventions on the East Coast. And it is very clear that the palpable energy in the room, that people just need to be and see and hang out with one another. And the reason why I bring that up is actually, while it is gaming related, you do get a lot of tech overlap. So it was also interesting to hear those conversations.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's a both and for sure. You don't really realize it because you're in college or you're looking for your first job after high school or whatever. And you think, oh, they just skip over my resume. I'm getting fed to a bot. Then you go meet someone on the recruiting side and they are just swarmed with applications. Yep. Oh, yeah. So when you tell one of them, hey, I know this person and I can validate them and they're already great, and they'll still go through the interview process, but that saves everyone time and you have a great candidate. So of course you'll reach out. It's just, it follows Occam's razor, really. Like, yeah, there's someone here that's already great. Yep. Why would I go prune a million resumes? And obviously I'll do both, right? But it just makes sense.
I agree. So you landed at System Initiative. You've been there for about 4 years, just over 4 years. So to our listeners that maybe have never heard of System Initiative before, what is it?
Yeah. We say that System Initiative is an AI native automation platform. And you can kind of split that up into two parts. The AI native part is that it's built from the ground up with artificial intelligence at the core of how you work with the system. And the infrastructure automation part is the stuff you've always done in infrastructure automation. It manages, provisions, configures, and monitors your infrastructure. However, with a pretty big twist, a lot of infrastructure automation is declarative in nature. So you have a CRD, you say, I want my infrastructure to reach this desired state, you update it, your custom resource corresponding to that definition, and some controller goes, yeah, I'll go talk to the AWS API, we'll bump you up in RAM. Although these days, if we bump you up in RAM, we're gonna open up another mortgage for you basically in cost. Okay. But basically, that has been how it's worked for a little while. System Initiative is actually imperative rather than declarative. And this gets into the AI native part too that integrates really well. System Initiative is basically a one-to-one modeling of the real world to our model using a digital twin type architecture. And what that means is for every resource that exists, let's just use EC2 instance, a standard VM.
How dare you? Oxide instance. No, I'm just kidding.
Hey, okay, let's follow that. Could be either or, right? It's going to correspond to a real rack or a provisioned VM. It's going to correspond to a piece of infrastructure. And rather than just being declarative and having the model say, I need the rack to change its settings, or I need the EC2 instance to have a different storage configuration. Maybe I want ext4 for like my Linux storage file system layout or whatever, rather than XFS. Those kind of tweaks you can make. Now, this is why the AI native part is important, because it all lies on a graph. You update one thing, it updates a value somewhere else. It triggers a qualification that ensures your policy for how your infrastructure is laid out as well. And it's all lives coexisting in a one-to-one mapping of the upstream domain. We don't have a DSL. We don't have like a dot state file or a TF file or anything. It's all one-to-one with upstream infrastructure mapping of what you would call with like the AWS CLI or just directly to an endpoint. And what the AI really enjoys with that, our AI agent, is that we have strictly declared APIs, and the system all is on this immutable graph that every time you make a change to it, you have to open a change set like a Git branch, make successive changes to it, and it can read and infer from the spec, as well as give you that final moment to say, hey, the AI did a bunch of wild stuff. Are you sure you want all this? With a review screen, with the ability to abandon the change set, and then you can apply, and those things will go change in the real world. And the imperative bit is if other users are changing things in the real world, or if you rerun your qualifications, you refresh your resources, maybe in the EC2 console, somebody destroys a piece of infrastructure, well, then on your side, you can contend with those changes and then ask the agent, hey, these things change in the real world. Maybe I want it in this desired state, but maybe I actually want to take in those changes into the change set I was working in and roll forward with it. So that's basically what we are. You know, I would consider this as a successor to Terraform, Pulumi. A lot of these infrastructure as code tooling, because of this level of intelligence is just immediately higher. But also just how you manage and provision infrastructure regardless of whether it's IAC or not. So,
yeah. No, yeah. This is good. I've used System Initiative before. I've written some assets. I've used the platform. I've understood it, and I know probably many of our listeners have not used it. And I would like to kind of get them like a framing. So before we kind of dive into more of the architecture and all that stuff, I want to talk a bit about just the comparison to this sort of like infrastructure as code V1 stack, where you have something like, I don't even know if I can count Ansible in this really, but you have Terraform there, right? Where it's a declarative mode. It has CRUD functions that tie to a state file, and the way that your infrastructure, the way Terraform knows that your infrastructure is managed is that it's in the state file. And the way that it knows to not like touch something is if the state file matches reality. Then it's like, okay, I don't have to touch that instance because it already matches reality. So can you like reconcile, I purposely chose that word. Can you reconcile like Terraform to system initiative for our listeners and viewers? Because when you say that it's like not declarative, that it's imperative, then my immediate question is, well, how does it know that some resource shouldn't be touched, right? Like, how does it do that sort of reconciliation and understand that, hey, I already created instance A, I shouldn't go create it again? Because when people hear imperative, they think like, do it again and again and again, unless it's idempotent, right?
Yep. It's, the word imperative, I think, is almost inadequate to describe what we mean when we say that. But it's always been that way in the infrastructure space. You're either declarative or imperative, and definitionally we fit more in that box. Right. So I could sort of break that down a bit. So Terraform, when you run Terraform apply, and you have a state file, it goes and takes your declarations and tries to reconcile it with the real world and reach that desired state. When you delete an EC2 instance in the console, your state file is now out of date. You can refresh your state file, get a new one, whatever, but no matter what, in your Git repository that your Terraform's checked into, that state file is out of date.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of different things you can do. You can grab another pull request, update the state file. It'll run some automated tests. Will those tests be run against the infrastructure or just linting and running against the Terraform file? Who knows? It depends on what you want to do. But essentially, it's a one-way street. You can update some of the stuff on your side with the Terraform repo, but it's basically apply outwards. With System Initiative, first of all, just want to get it out there. If you want to go from Terraform to System Initiative, you don't actually have to fully switch. In System Initiative, you can discover everything in your AWS account or Azure account, or we have limited Google Cloud support now too, and Hetzner and a bunch of other stuff, DigitalOcean as well. And then you can actually just model your entire infrastructure in System Initiative without having to switch. So
you can just like see what you have, really.
Exactly. Yeah. A lot of folks actually enjoy that. Just, hey, let me just hit the discover button and just see what's in there. And then when it comes to, the updating multiple times problem that folks are worried about, one thing we've learned is that it happens less times than you think. And this config drift, you don't want it to be invisible. You want to show users that it did happen. So if there is configuration drift, somebody got paged, they didn't follow a process fully, they changed something on the box, they didn't document it, and then they went on vacation, and now your configuration doesn't match your state file or your Terraform file locally and your state file. In System Initiative, when we refresh the asset for you, it'll rerun the qualifications, and you will likely have a qualification or policy set that says, hey, make sure across these VPCs, they're not in this like site or address range or whatever, for the networking layer. And that qualification will fail. And then when you open a new change set, you're able to contend with, do I fix this? Or was this actually a good intended change, and should we modify the organization's policy to fall with it? So you have a choice. It's imperative is two-way, but the way I see it is it's more of a choice to decide whether or not you want your model to enforce it or you want your real world to become the new standard. And, a lot of folks will say, oh, of course I want the model to be the standard. And they're absolutely right. And you can use System Initiative in that declarative format. You absolutely can.
Yeah.
The imperative bit is just, if the real world changes, we're going to tell you it is, and it's up to you to decide what you want to do with it.
Yeah, because in like something like Terraform, when you said Terraform's a one-way street, I was like, well, yes and no. But then I thought about it more, and yeah, it kind of is a one-way street, because if my state file is out of date in Terraform, I have to reconcile that, and usually you can't make changes to the state file directly, because then they'll just get overwritten on the next refresh. You have to like make the config match the state, and like it really is kind of one way, because it's making config match state rather than state match config, right? Yep. And it's pretty interesting in that regard when you think about it, because it is annoying. And something I've said on this, I think I've said it on this podcast, but I also said it to Adam Jacob. I think a big mistake that our industry has made is we've tied too many things to like a version control system like Git and GitHub. Like documentation, why do I have to open up a whole pull request and sign a CLA just to fix a typo on your website? That's silly. And I said the same thing about infrastructure, because now if you have your Terraform configuration in a repository and the state file somewhere else, now modifying the config to match that state reality to handle drift is an annoying process. It's a pull request or 7, you know what I mean? Like just to get this going, when really what you want to do is modify it live and get it to a point and then do the pull requests or whatever you need to do. And I like that System Initiative kind of stepped away from using like Git as the source of truth, but you modeled some of the advantages of Git with the change set, architecture.
Yeah, I think that like the source of truth thing that you pointed out was what I was going to say, which is so many things like Git wants to be a source of truth. And with all this infrastructure stuff, the real world is a source of truth. And so you always need to like go to the real world and be like, what's actually there? And then decide what you're going to do. And like trying to have two sources of truth makes your system much more messy, I would say, at the end of the day. I think that's true for a whole bunch of stuff where you just need like a better way of having version control that is, I guess, to use like an old C term, like volatile. It's like, yeah, like I can't assume things about this because it might have changed in a way that I need to go out there and figure out before like I move forward. And I can't just assume that what I have here or what I thought I had there is what's actually there.
Right. And well, let's actually talk about that, like in defense of this, like Git and infrastructure as tool pattern. It is great. Helm chart, Terraform, excellent for saying I have a plan for what this chunk of infrastructure is, like VPC, subnet, EKS cluster, EC2 instances, like all this setup. It's great for having that, and it's in code. And every time you make a contribution to it, shows up on your profile. You get some stars. You can use that for your next.
Give my green boxes, baby.
You can do that for your next interview. You just got off Reddit. You have your new NeoVim set up, and like you are like just out there slinging code. And that's a real thing. The developer experience is really fun for people with that. And then even some of the agents people add into the mix now, regardless of which side they fall on AI, those that love it, that's part of that equation. Those that hate it, that's not part of that equation. It's all, there's something real about that local experience, checking it in the Git and hitting merge that just, we like that for some reason in our space. We really do like that. And actually, a bit of an admittance on the System Initiative side is we agree that is a great way to check in your plans, check in your templates. Check in your live infrastructure? No. Now I'm maintaining 2 states, and something's going to get out of date very fast. And GitHub and Git are just not are not in a state where they can handle inbound changes from the real world, things that have shifted, things that move on refresh. If it doesn't go through that repo, and you go change it in the console or something else happens, so be it. And even if you lock down the console, there's a lot of ways you can have drift occur. And when it comes to us sort of admitting, you know what, we need to actually help invest in that developer experience, System Initiative was originally basically single interface, just the front end, highly collaborative multiplayer. And you would make edits to assets, or what we call like our models of the real world infrastructure and all the functions that come along with it that call out to the provider APIs. You would do that all in browser. And what we learned is that is just not the way to go for everything. We have 4 interfaces now: a CLI, which does, your main basic stuff like create a change set, create a component, which is like an instance mapping to a real world infrastructure. And then we have an agent, which is with natural language. It'll call out, use tools in our MCP server. And it's actually a lot more simple than you would think, because we just have a bunch of prompts and tools. And if the user says, I want to provision a GKE cluster on Google Cloud, it'll say, okay, I know you're talking about Google Cloud, and I know you need a Google Cloud credential, and I'm pretty sure I'm going to read the spec, and you have all these hints on what everything does in the spec, because System Initiative like has all that, kind of like a CRD or whatever. It has everything in line, and it knows basically what to set it up. And it says, hey, I think you want this. Do you want to go apply it in the real world? So that's the agent, number 2. Number 3 is the public API. We have generated Python and TypeScript SDKs. That's like, you can think of if you have a ton of infrastructure and you're a large scale company, that's one of the easiest ways to get onboarded, because you can just query System Initiative directly. And then number 4 is the UI. And if I go all the way back to the CLI and the agent and all of that, you actually write templates now locally, and you write policy files now locally, and you use the CLI to interact with them. And those checked in the source control are highly valuable. So we've actually realized there is something there that Terraform's getting right. There's a reason why it hasn't been displaced, is because it is very good at that collaborative element of the code. Just the second it becomes real world, that's when we think we have some of the answers. At least we hope we do.
No, that makes sense. I mean, to kind of give the listener maybe a mapping here. So you have like Terraform to System Initiative. You have a Terraform provider, which would be a collection of System Initiative assets, right? And each resource and data source would be like a different System Initiative asset.
That's
and
right.
An asset can have a collection of like functions and qualifications to control how it behaves. And then you have templates, which I haven't played with templates yet, but I believe they're akin to something like a module in Terraform, maybe. Is that correct to say?
I would say yes, crossed with a Helm chart.
Okay.
Something like that would be the most analogous bit to me. This is where my Terraform knowledge sort of like tapers off a bit. It's been a while since I deployed one. I try and like keep in touch with what everyone's doing every once in a while. Actually, last time I used it was OpenTofu, but that's interesting. Terraform
there's
modules.
OpenTofu is the thing. I always forget about that. I need to make an issue to support OpenTofu, because I have like not really liked that much. But anyway, separate thing.
Yep. Yes. I would actually say modules are the most analogous thing.
Okay.
Yep.
Cool. So you're not in completely unfamiliar territory if you want to like try System Initiative and go with it. And I enjoyed using it. So I have not tried the AI stuff yet. I've been meaning to do that, but time has not been on my side lately. But I did use AI, like an AI agent locally, to write some Terraform configuration for me. And it was a pleasant experience, barring the fact that Terraform's not really made for that, right? Like I kind of just told the AI agent, like, hey, generate me some Terraform config that does X, Y, and Z and blah, 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 blah. And I was like, wow, for the first time, I don't have to write HCL myself. Like the AI can just do this for me. And it was a pleasant experience. And in my mind, I was like, I can only imagine how much better something like System Initiative would be if they're designing for AI agents and AI up front, right? With MCP servers and all that stuff. So I've been meaning to try the AI stuff. I just have not had time, but I'm excited to see what that looks like.
Fortunately, coming in now is the best time, because with the CLI, we're experimenting, adding different support. Originally, the agent was ran via Claude Code, but we have some experimental codex stuff going on too. And the SI CLI is now how you launch the agent. Before, it was some like Docker run type stuff and
Gotcha.
A little more manually managed. So if you go to the repo or the website, curl bash, everyone's favorite, download the CLI. That's kind of the best way to get started.
Nice.
Hello, viewer/listener. It's producer Kris here. And for this episode, we're actually going to take all of the supporter-only excerpts, and we're just going to put them right here. So we're going to play them all in a row right now for the 4 chapters of supporter-only content. If you are not a supporter already and you want to hear the rest of these conversations, you should head on over to fallthrough.fm/subscribe so you can sign up and get access to the extended edition of this episode. And if you are a supporter and you're like, I don't know if I want to listen to the extended version, if any of these snippets pique your interest, then you should switch over to the extended version starting at chapter 6, which is where this chapter is. Now, when you hear this sound, that means that we're switching between the chapter segments. And with that, here's the first one.
Well, first of all, Postgres can do probably anything you want it to if you respect it. I firmly believe that. Postgres can pretty much do anything. Just respect it, know what it's good at, actually like profile your queries, lay out your query plans, whatever. Domain-driven design, I'm not dogmatic about a lot of things, but I'm pretty dogmatic that domain-driven design is the only way to keep your head above water. Knowing where your bounded contexts are, where your domains are, not writing software by its, if I see a util directory, I go a little nuts.
But the severe dislike of musicians for AI, right? There's a lot of we don't like this, AI generated music is crap, blah, 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 blah. I'm like, yo, autotune, digital audio workstations, all of these MIDI to some degree, all of this stuff is the same sort of vein of hey, now you as a musician can do so much more than you could do before because you have these tools. This happens a lot with capitalism, where people are like, capitalism bad. It's it's not that capitalism is bad. It's that the value capture by people in power that kind of pulls value to them and leaves everybody else out. That's the bad thing. So it's not like the AI is the bad thing. All of these tools aren't the bad thing. The thing that people are worried about is companies behaving poorly. And it's okay, well,
which was true regardless of AI.
Yeah, it's companies have been been doing things poorly behaving poorly for a very, very long time. And it's this is just another instance of that thing happening. But people are oh, we're worried about artists and musicians. I'm have you worked in the music industry ever? So, did any of those conversations pique your interest? If they did, then you should either sign up to be a supporter today or switch on over to the extended edition of the episode. If you just want to keep listening to the regular edition, then keep on listening. And for those of you who are supporters, thank you so much for your support. Back to the show.
Nice. I want to revisit the AI topic a little bit because I know when I was following System Initiative, Adam just one day started going all in on AI. And Adam was just this is the right way for managing infrastructure. So I guess I want to more chat about that AI pivot from System Initiative and why? Well, I mean less of why, because I know AI is everywhere, blah, blah, blah. But how did that happen internally,
I followed a similar curve to I was actually, like I said before we were recording, I was listening to both of yours predictions for 2026 and the year ahead podcasts on Fall Through. And, Kris sort of being converted was a little similar to me over time, actually.
Kris is the biggest AI booster I know now.
I'm not an AI booster, but okay.
And Adam also followed a similar journey. We've been trying stuff on and off for years since, let's say, what a lot of folks were with the ChatGPT, with the GPT-3 launch, followed by ChatGPT, that whole era. I think that was late 2022, November 2022, something like that. We had always been trying things on and off. And wow, we were, I don't want to say repellent, not a never, but just we don't see use here at this time. Kept trying it over and over. Okay, wait, now with a PR. So we started with our own code. Okay, now with a pull request, I can have it format my Rust file for me and predict what's a more idiomatic way to do this. Oh, that's cool. Oh, now it can do this little refactor that I used to like doing as a manual off time task, but now I can just have it Claude Code do it to oh wait, this Claude Code thing's good, to wait, it understands our repo, to wait, I just fed it a bug report and it just fixed the bug in one shot. This happened in a matter of months, not years, months.
Yeah.
I want to say early 24 to mid 25. That ride, like I some folks were using Claude. Were they using Claude? At least ChatGPT in early 24. And yeah, I was using it to like, with a lot of spec-based stuff, like rather than combing Postgres documentation, like cross-reference this with this query. Does this look about right? It was very good at that kind of thing. But then once I got away from quantitative spec stuff to more qualitative, like this is the spirit of what I want, can you infer? Go plan mode in Claude. It's just crazy. So that's happening in the background. Regardless of system initiative, how we are writing system initiative is changing.
Right.
That's happening in the background. And I want to say early 25 is when you started seeing folks using it for real. Late 25 is when you started seeing everyone at least trying it for real. And now I don't even start a single PR without Claude. Even if I throw all of it out, I'm like, explain to me what's going on, try and one shot it, all this. It's just, if it works, it's a win. If it doesn't, so be it, right? I can go make coffee while it's thinking, and then I'll come back and throw it out if need be. Now, in terms of the product, we had Ryan from Cloud Life, one of the folks we work with on System Initiative, Cloud Life Consulting, was experimenting with calling our public API with a prompt. And at first we were like, whoa, this thing, I see the potential, but it's not ready. And will it ever be ready? We don't know. This is maybe early or mid 2025. Then one day, because, there's one thing Adam's talked about with being a founder. And I actually talked to Jay Cooper from Railway about this too. One thing that's interesting about being a founder is like, you think like, from what I've heard, I haven't been a founder yet. So this is, hey, I have no idea, but I'm going to tell you what I think happens. It's hard to keep up with what's going on in the outside world, but you have to look at Hacker News. You have to look at LinkedIn. You have to try things because it's probably so easy to get so sucked into what you're doing in the day and day in your startup. This is what I heard from several founders. Like, you think you're going to get more connected with the outside world because you have to pay attention, but the opposite can happen. You're so focused on staying alive and making sure everyone's well fed and doing your fiduciary responsibility to the board, like all this kind of stuff that you sometimes miss what's going on in the real world. And Adam's out there just trying things every once in a while. And then it's like, all right, I'm going to try and do this AI thing with System Initiative. And along the way, MCP is blowing up with MCP tools. And in the background, I'm seeing Adam experiment this, and I'm seeing Darren Shepard, who I've been keeping touch with all these years after Rancher. They're all in on MCP too for their obot.ai stuff. And basically, he's rebuilding it. And he's like, okay, not only is this working, it's skipping all the things you had to do in the UI. So I can just say, build me a cluster, and it knows to, because we have we did not System Initiative was designed to be AI native in the sense that the MCP tools are handcrafted. They're not hard copy pasted HTTP route translations. It is absolutely handcrafted to be that way, but the spec allows for it so well that the MCP tools are like, hey, you have the ability to qualify. You want to make sure that your VPC doesn't fall in this range? Well, I have a tool to make a qualification for that. Oh, you want to make something of the subnet in shape? Well, System Initiative knows that there's subscription type hinting to connect these two, your S3 bucket with your subnet stuff. So this pivot was very emergent, not planned.
And it wasn't
Ryan's.
It was obvious, but it wasn't obvious, right?
Exactly.
Like we didn't touch on that. So to give some context to the listeners, so System Initiative has the assets we were saying, right? Assets are akin to like Terraform resources and data sources, but they solve for two extra things that Terraform doesn't solve for. One is Terraform doesn't really have a way to like test or qualify the thing you just created or assert on that thing. They have this test block now, but it wasn't that there early in Terraform. And even so, that test block is still a little limited. But System Initiative gives you a function called the qualification that you can just run. And I think you can have many qualifications, right? It's not just one function. You can have many qualifications. Yeah. So you can just say like, hey, assert that the VPC I created it has a subnet or has these tags or whatever it is. And you can run those qualifications. So that's already a lever to bind or to like bound the AI agent and say, hey, this is how you check your work. Because we all know when you use AI agents, if you can give it bounds via tests or whatever and keep it kind of like, you're not finished until this is correct. Like, this is your correctness. That makes the output of the AI even better. So you have that and System Initiative, that one lever. But then you have the other lever, which I don't think we talk about too much, or I don't hear you all talking about it too much, but it's super powerful here. In Terraform, you have two different resources and you want to take the region identifier, or I don't know, you want to take the VPC ID and attach it to your instance, right? Like this instance is in this VPC and you do that by ID. The field though is a string, right? Mm. Any string can be put into that input.
Yeah.
And System Initiative, all your inputs and outputs are typed. Yeah. So you can only put a VPC ID in this input for an instance. You can't just put any arbitrary string. And now the AI knows these things link to one another. Whereas in Terraform,
that's right,
it would just have to figure that out because the attributes just happen to be named similarly or something, right? Mm-hmm. So yeah. And feel free to clarify, yeah.
Yeah, a slight correction is you can override it. You can put any string there. It understands that it's a string, but it understands that you're absolutely correct. I am looking for a VPC ID here. We have a suggestions and subscription systems. So a way all these components connect is with subscriptions. You subscribe to one string field from another, and that maps over and over. You could think of this as like variable templating in something like Customize or Helm, but just on complete other level. And it has been so powerful. We were shocked at how good it was. That's how we landed there. I would say since though, we've really learned that this is a both and situation. Like we were very heavy on like AI, particularly in the mid to late 2025. I would say as we emerge into 2026, there are four interfaces, the System Initiative: CLI, AI, UI, and public API. But we firmly do believe that the AI native way is the fastest way. Whenever I prep for a demo, I just say I need infrastructure of this shape, and it uses all the existing System Initiative stuff. At an architecture level, we did not have to build anything new other than an MCP server and some minor changes to the public API, since that's what it calls out to.
And when I'm using the AI like interface, what am I doing? I haven't used it yet. Sorry, forgive me. I should have tried it.
No, you're good.
I haven't used the AI interface yet. What am I doing? Is it like Claude Code in the sense that I like write SI AI agent and then I get like an interactive terminal, or like what is the thing that I'm actually working with? Or is it in the web UI?
That's a great question. The SI binary will launch a Claude Code instance.
Okay.
And like I said, we're working on some experimental codec stuff. Not entirely sure if it's working yet, and then that will launch an MCP server too. So you get a little MCP server running, you get a Claude Code instance. And the idea there is that if we manage that interaction, and we still might in the future, but for now, it's impossible for us to like take on the Claude cost and put some like cost on top, then charge that out to you, or do we just eat that cost? And it's unclear where we want to lie there. And a lot of customers and people can come with their own AI stuff too, their own LLMs, and maybe want to interact in a different way. So we've sort of, I don't want to use the word punt because it's been intentional, but basically you're using natural language in a terminal with Claude Code most of the time.
And it's true Claude Code. So like you probably didn't get bit by that Anthropic changing the rules about how Claude Code subscriptions could be used with like third-party agents.
Correct.
Okay. Cool.
Correct.
Huh, I mean, that makes sense, right? If you're a startup, you don't want to get into the game of building an AI agent. You want to just use what's out there and fall in line with the existing tools. And then you basically just launch code with all the configurations needed to work.
You also have you also have a good chance of making a worse one.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. So why not use the one that's upstream running really well? Like it's, you know, I when I've used Linux distros, I've used Arch Linux and Fedora. Why? They give you latest vanilla packages most of the time. The end, right? And in the same way that, and a lot of folks don't know this, like Debian and Ubuntu will like patch their packages to like work with one another a lot more frequently. I might be getting that somewhat wrong, so someone is going to email me saying how I'm wrong. But basically, the Arch packages are untouched, somewhat for better or for worse. The interoperability may be worse, and the reason why people like Debian stable is because of that. But applying that philosophy back out, you know, we're all Arch Linux users. The majority of us are, and employ this philosophy a lot. System initiative deploys to staging with every single PR we make. And then once a day it has a deploy. And if we had zero downtime deploys, we would probably be deploying on every merge domain too. So we use aggressive feature flagging. And why does this all matter to the agent in Claude Code? Because that philosophy extends to the product too, whether intentional or unintentional. Let them use the best tool out there, not our own Frankenstein wrapper of it. Someday we may add one, and it won't be a Frankenstein app wrapper. It'll be good. But for now, every time you get excited about a Claude Code update or a new plugin that was added, we get excited too. We try that stuff. Code Simplify, I think, was an Anthropic thing that they just released this past weekend, this plugin. And we get the new model, we get the new Claude Code, we get the new plugin, same as you do. So, yeah.
That makes sense. I like that too. It's nice to see people kind of changing their mind on AI. I mean, I read a whole thread about how AI users are bad and blah, blah, blah. There's also the that side of it too. But it is nice to see more people embracing it because, you know, it helps, right? I'm not sitting here saying it writes my code for me and that I provide no value. I know what I need to do. I can do it faster with AI. And like, I can see how that can be valuable for instances. For infrastructure. Because like, I don't want to write HCL files and write, you know, all these different blocks and tie them together and make 100 resources. I don't want to do that. I know that the end result of what I want is this thing of like 100, you know, instances or whatever. But I don't want to write the Terraform for it. That's just like a waste of my time. And then I have to like deal with the errors and blah, blah. But when I can use AI to like augment the things that I want to do, it's a time saver. And I love that. So I'm glad to see you all like, you know, jumping on the AI sort of bandwagon. Not in a bad way, but in a more directed, focused way. I'm glad to see you all doing that because that'll lower the barrier to entry and make the power users faster. So I appreciate that.
Yeah.
Well, touch on. Oh, go ahead.
Yeah, one quick thing there.
Yeah.
Like I said, I went to MagFest recently, the gaming convention here in the DC area, where I'm also based out of. The anti-AI sentiment was the strongest I've ever seen. And for good reason, right? Like if you're a, that convention has a lot of music creators, a lot of game creators, you know, the human element to this is vitally important for these things. I don't know that I would want to listen to AI generated music or a video game. I really don't think so. And at least not now. And, the environmental impact of the data centers, that a lot of these folks are recognizing. And they're like, this has not improved anything materially in my life. It has only made things more expensive. I can't get RAM in my computer. I made that joke earlier, but seriously, this is fueling some of it. And also it's viewed as like, potentially, are you going to replace my job with this? And it's very weird going from that to talking about how great it is on this podcast for us, and how I will pretty much never write a PR again at System Initiative without Claude or something like it.
There will always be people that program. In the same way that there's still tons of people that write assembly for various reasons. Like compilers didn't get rid of assembly writers. It just made it so people who couldn't really build software before, or even the scale of software you wanted to build, shifted dramatically. And I think I think in the long run, AI might actually help us get out of the current hole we're in, where like, because we're all paying so much attention to code, it's really hard to shift code into the future. Like I've talked about this a ton of times on the podcast, where it's just like, we're all so stuck on C, and C is like literally drowning us with like all of its baggage, with how it's so tied to the architecture of our chips and whatnot. And our hardware is struggling so much to like pretend that it's something that C wants to use. And I think that if we move ourselves more and more into writing stuff with AI, we have the opportunity to actually have that like kind of go back through and be like, oh, actually now it becomes a lot easier to reckon with the very concurrent and parallel and out of order execution nature of the hardware that we have. It'll be a lot easier for people to write applications that then the AI, at least we can have AI explain it to you like, hey, this is how it's working in a distributed systems context. I think one of the biggest problems in software engineering right now is that people don't understand distributed systems well enough. And I think people have this understanding that it is like that it's just like, oh, this is such a foreign thing. And I'm like, your entire life, your entire world is like concurrent, parallel, and asynchronous. Like it's only when you sit down and start typing code that all of a sudden your mind goes into this linearizable one thing happens another, and there's not multiple things happening at once. Like this is the only domain in your life where that is a real thing. Like right now there are so many other things happening in your life. There's so many things you're waiting to like complete. There's so many concurrent tasks. There's other things you're thinking about. There's like parallel things happening because there's multiple people in the world, right? So it's like we have a natural and native understanding of distributed systems, but we've like kind of dumbed ourselves down over time to think like, oh, in the computing realm, that's not what we have to deal with. And we have to have this shift. And once again, like the biggest part of that shift is just educating people about how this stuff works. And when you can just sit down with like a coding agent and an LM and just start asking it questions and start asking it to write code so you can look at the code and see how it works and have your own path through it, that makes it so much easier for you to learn how all this stuff works. So in the long run, we have more people who get how this stuff works, which helps us build better languages that can actually align with the underlying hardware, and then eventually get the hardware people to give us at first escape hatches to be like, that nice layer that you gave me, I don't want that layer at all. Like, give me the raw processing power of that hardware. Give me those like 500 processing cores. Let me just go wild with them, and my programming language can actually reckon with them. Or we start building much more interesting things.
Well, if programming languages are written for the human input, but the human's no longer directly doing the input because of natural language, then do they even need to look the way they do at the moment, right? Because programming languages are sort of like English-ish a lot of the time. And do they even need to look like that if it's going to be machine written in the future? It's one of the things I think about is like, is the next generation of programming language really just a spec that eventually goes to assembly versus something like what it is now? You're not going to be able to
Jared
manually
asked
do
us
it
on
yourself.
a changelog episode. He's like, does programming languages go away in face of like English, or is Go like, do we pick like a language like Go or something, and that's like the de facto language that everything goes to or whatever? And I don't know. I think we're, obviously the future will tell us what happens.
I think we'll still be able to read or have some readable output of programming languages, kind of like we have readable output of machine code in assembly. But I think it'll be probably more like assembly, where like the underlying thing is just this like very compact format that is like very efficient for LLMs. You can just translate that into something that's more human readable and understandable.
Yeah. Now let me be clear, because I kicked the hornet's nest and it's probably too late to clarify. Not saying programming is going to go away. Absolutely not. As a hobby, pastime, the art of it, 100% here forever. And in fact, last night I wrote a PR entirely without AI assistance. After I was just saying I pretty much always do AI assistance, that one I completely did. Loved it. Great time. It's more so like if what you do
Grandpa.
is build, if what you do is build CRUD HTTP servers, and that's what you do without any forward thinking for architecture or the product or how users use it, that little bit of human element interaction, design, user interactability, you're just grinding out things that it can produce in one shot. That level of programmer, what I do is programmer and nothing else. That is what I get a little worried about. And as well as too, I don't have an answer for things like the environmental concerns and like the realness of artists, and like there's even some gray area stuff like in the video game Arc Raiders. The voice actors, I think, gave permission for their voices to be used for AI voice generation. And it's a multiplayer video game, not a single player one, with a lot of story and dialogue. And they want to make a lot of frequent updates and patches. And the initial voice actors gave permission for that. Other voice actors aren't a fan of that, and some players are, and some are like, it's not a big deal. And I think if there's one thing I want to get away on is, I'm like decided about system initiative. Am I decided about all these other things? Nope. We'll see what 2026 has in store.
That's what my problem with when people try to say like you're bad because you use AI. And just like, no, you're not bad because you use AI. And yeah, you should be thinking about other concerns too, like the environmental concerns and whatnot. Like my wife came up to me and is like, are we going to run out of water because the data center is using it all? Like in so many words, that's what she was telling me. She was like, the data center is using a lot of water. This is a problem. And I was like, well, yeah, but they've kind of always been using a lot of water too.
Yeah, right.
But also, I think that the water thing's always interesting too, because it's like, well, it depends. Are you in a place where there's not a lot of water? Because like if you're in a place where there's a lot of water, then this isn't a problem. Like the thing is like, go build data centers where there's lots of water, and then you won't have this problem of like water issues.
To me, it was funny because like she's not in the tech at all. So for her to hear about it means that these issues have like made their way to like the mainstream lay people that are not in the tech field, right? And if it made it to them, that means they're forming opinions on it, and one way or the other, get for or against it.
I mean, I think this is like all of this in general is like an example of like the dose makes the poison, where I think people are like, we must never burn a single drop of gasoline ever again for our planet. And it's like, you can burn gasoline. Like that's not the problem. Like burning oil is not the problem. It's the amount of it that we're burning is a problem. So like the goal is not to burn none. That is not a practical goal. Like burn less. Like it's not to have no data centers. It's to put data centers in places where it makes sense, and then build
and burn
the
intentionally too. Not just not even just less for the sake of less, but intentionally burn it for the right benefits.
But like, for example, data centers are an interesting example of this, because like I think it's in one of the Nordic countries where they're starting to build more data centers, because like it's cold there almost all of the time. They have a need for heat. So they're like, oh, well, we can just like, if you need the data center to be cooler, we can just open the windows and then everything is cooler. And then we can take that heat that we're generating and like pump it somewhere else to like heat, because it's cold outside and people need heat in their homes or whatever. So it's like these data centers could actually be very beneficial for all of us, but it's like, instead of putting them in the cold places, we're putting them in like Arizona, where there's like, it's already hot there. There's not enough water. It's like, this is not a good place to put these things. There's plenty, especially in America, like there's plenty of cold places. Go put your like data centers in Minnesota or something. Like go put them in places where it's cold a lot of the year, and they'll operate much more efficiently, and you won't have to have these problems with how much water you're using and all of that.
Yeah.
Put them in places where it's cold and very sunny or very windy, and like many of these problems will go away, because you can just power them based on renewables, and then you can cool them with just the air around you. Or like, if you're using water, attach it to some giant lake, and that lake is probably pretty cold anyway. So it's like not going to be as much of a problem. But like there's solutions here. It's not like AI data center bad, we should stop it. Or like cars are bad, nobody should ever drive a car again. It's like, no, we need multiple solutions here to reduce the negative things that we're doing.
It's true. Well, I know Nick, we've talked a lot about SI. We talked a lot about AI. Obviously, we opened my AI booster. You've opened them up to talking about AI.
A booster. I'm a practicalist. Thank you.
Any last words of wisdom before we wrap it up?
It is a tumultuous time in the industry, and we're all trying to figure it out. And over the past few months, I've had a little bit of moments of like, oh my gosh, what am I doing? Do I write code anymore? And
me too.
I have some friends who don't use AI at work at all. It's going through a lot of regulatory stuff, and it slows them down and their team down and creates a lot of distractions. There's a lot of input right now, whether it's politics in tech as well, particularly American politics in tech, and coming off of a massive hype wave after COVID, followed by a layoff wave. It's tumultuous, but what I'll say is this: it is generally true that we need people to make great software, and people use great software more than they ever have before. And in times when, I go to a lot of talks for students and stuff where they're like, ooh, the economy's rough right now. Ooh, the economy's rough. They say it every talk, every year, ever. The economy has always been rough every year.
Saw that. Yeah, they said that when I was in college too.
Yes, they will always say the economy is rough every year. And to some extent, there are definitely, I'm not dismissing that there are waves of like, there are times where the industry is in a rough patch and in a great patch. But the general trend line is true that we need people to build great software products in both open source and closed source domains. And I would say this is time to stay the course, try new things, see what's out there. Hacker News and Reddit, you can skip the comments for a lot of those places, and YouTube. There are a lot of great YouTubers and streamers now too that folks like. And just find the good stuff, tune out the bad stuff, quickly unsubscribe, say this post is irrelevant. Seriously, that stuff is very important on socials. And what I'm learning going into 2026 is that principle is generally true. We're not going to like have the size of our companies or double the size of our companies because of all these happenings. We are mostly still going to keep building great software. And those are the parting words that I have.
I love it. I will say that I felt similarly over the holiday break I had some trepidation about what's going on, and it definitely doom scrolling. And I think I mentioned it on a previous episode already, but it's shared experience. I'm glad to hear that I'm not the only one thinking about this. So thanks for coming on, of course. Thanks for everything. I really enjoyed having you here, and it's funny. You have a plan of what you're going to talk about, and then you kind of like, as the episode is recording, you go here and there. But I love like where episodes go. That's why I don't go too crazy on making show notes as much anymore, just because when we get here, the conversation we let it flow naturally, and I love that. But
yeah,
thank you for coming on.
We mostly did it, and you're welcome. I had a blast. This was great.
Always love that. Come back soon. We always like guests that come back and talk more about, who knows? There's so many fun things to talk about in this industry.
I think we should tackle something easy like geopolitics and the heating of data centers that I definitely know enough about. And I could tell you my opinion. There is something interesting there. I'm doing a lot of, and maybe Matthew, until you're into your imparting words, this is a time to absorb research, go to the original source for sure for a lot of stuff. Like I am a sponge right now. I'm not really outputting a lot of opinions other than the opinion that I know what I want for system initiative. I don't know for everything else. And just total absorption mode.
For sure.
Be the sponge.
Be the sponge.
I have an interesting comment on that, but we can talk about that on break.
Let's do it.
So, let me do an outro here. So, viewer/listener, how'd you enjoy that conversation? First guest of 2026, first guest in a while. It's been a number of weeks, months since we've had guests, and as Matt has said many times, we're gonna have more guests. We're actually recording another episode tomorrow. We're gonna have another guest. So actually, we have two guests, I think. So we're gonna bring back more guests. We're gonna have more panel discussions. It's gonna be a fun year all around. So let us know your thoughts about this episode. In the usual places: YouTube comments, Gopher Slag, Changelog, Zulip, or on any of our socials. And we'll see you next time. Thanks for listening. This episode of Fall Through was hosted by Matthew Sanabria with co-host Chris Brando and guest Nick Gerace. Fall Through is produced by Chris Brando and Angelica Hill, and our beats are by Breakmaster Cylinder. Okay, and then there's music. And then there's Matt. Go for it.
And scene.
So close to getting that outro right.
That's okay.
And then my brain was like, nah. Okay.
The recording's still going.